All praises to the Most High. Blessed be our mother, the Ruach HaKodesh, and our elder brother, Yahushua HaMashiach. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I have another word for the listening ears of Yah's people. But first, Miss Bakai, I want to play just a little bit of this song by Lawrence called Endure Till the End.
Just because you're an Israelite, the chosen of our Father, but do you understand the things that matter? I see some brothers twisting scriptures while abusing our sisters. Explain to me how this is love. They worship things like fringes and idolize their leaders. They're counted as the sheep for the slaughter. You should be careful, cause you don't want blood on your hands. Wolves in sheep clothing, they're among you, do you understand? We must endure till the end.
Another beautiful song by Lawrence. Okay, Miss Bakai, the title of this message will be called Yazerel, How Much Do Our Prayers Mean to Our Father Yah? How much do our prayers mean to Father Yah? And in this message, I'll be coming out of the Sefer Bible, the book of Yashar'al. And in this message, Miss Bakai, you will see how much the prayers of Yazerel mean to our Father Yah. Now, the scene is when our ancestors were in bondage in Egypt. And as Pharaoh gave them so much hard work to do, and our ancestors were sending up, prayers and their cries to our Father that he might do something about it. And after a while, our Father did respond to the prayers of our ancestors who were captives in Egypt. Okay, I'll start out reading from chapter 76, starting at verse 24. And it says, And all the children of Yazerel were yet in the land of Mizraim, serving the Mizraim, and all manner of hard work, and the hand of Mizraim continued in severity over the children of Yazerel in those days. At that time, Yahuwah smote Pharaoh, king of Mizraim, and he afflicted with the plague of leprosy from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. Owing to the cruel treatment of the children of Yazerel was this plague at that time from Yahuwah upon Pharaoh, king of Mizraim. So it is said in this part that our Father heard the prayers of Yazerel, and he afflicted the king, with a plague of leprosy, all right, from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. All right, so we started to see early in this message how much our prayers matter to our Father Yah. Okay, verse 26. For Yahuwah had hearkened to the prayer of his people, the children of Yazerel, and their cry reached him on account of their hard work. Still, his anger did not turn from them, and the hand of Pharaoh was still stretched out against the children of Yazerel. And Pharaoh hardened his neck before Yahuwah, and he increased his yoke over the children of Yazerel, and embittered their lives with all manner of hard work. And while Yahuwah had inflicted the plague upon Pharaoh, king of Mizraim, he asked his wise men and sorcerers to cure him. And his wise men and sorcerers said to him that if the blood of the little children were put into the wounds, he will be healed. And Pharaoh hearkened to them and sent his ministers to Goshen to the children of Yazerel to take their little children. And Pharaoh's ministers went and took the infants of the children of Yazerel from the bosom of their mothers by force, and they brought them to Pharaoh daily, a child each day. And the physicians killed them and applied them to the plague. Thus did they all the days. And the number of the children which Pharaoh slew was 375. So he was taking a child a day, and it lasted more than a year. But Yahuwah hearkened not to the physicians of the king of Mizraim, and the plague went on increasing mightily. And Pharaoh was 10 years afflicted with that plague. Still the heart of Pharaoh was more hardened against the children of Yazerel. And at the end of 10 years, Yahuwah continued to afflict Pharaoh with destructive plagues. And Yahuwah smote him with a bad tumor and sickness at the stomach. And that plague turned to a severe boil. At that time, the two ministers of Pharaoh came from the land of Goshen, where all the children of Yazerel, and went to the house of Pharaoh and said to him, "We have seen the children of Yazerel slacken in their work and negligence in their labor." And when Pharaoh heard the words of his ministers, his anger was kindled against the children of Yazerel exceedingly, for he was greatly grieved at his bodily pain. And he answered and said, "Now that the children of Yazerel know that I am ill, they turn and scoff at us. Now therefore, harness my chariot for me, and I will betake myself to Goshen, and will see the scoff of the children of Yazerel, with which they are deriding me." So his servants harnessed the chariot for him, and they took and made him ride upon a horse, for he was not able to ride himself. And he took with him 10 horsemen and 10 footmen, and went to the children of Yazerel to Goshen. And when they had come to the border of Mizraim, the king's horse passed into a narrow place, elevated in the hollow parts of the vineyard, fenced on both sides, the low plain country being on the other side. And the horses ran rapidly in that place and pressed each other, and the other horses pressed the king's horses. Voices sounded kind of hoarse. I was just singing a little bit before I started the video, and I don't know, but I got some hot tea right here. I had a back tooth abstracted yesterday, but I don't think that's causing me to be hoarse. As I continue, verse 44. And the king's horse fell into the low plain while the king was riding upon it. And when he fell, the chariot turned over the king's face, and the horse lay upon the king. And the king cried out, for his flesh was very sore. And the flesh of the king was torn from him, and his bones were broken, and he could not ride. For this thing was from Yahuwah, because of the prayers of our ancestors who was in Egyptian bondage. And it says that his anger didn't turn from them, But he still answered their prayers and their cries up to him concerning this hard work that Pharaoh of Egypt had put them under. So just imagine, Ms. Baka, those of us who are keeping his commandments, honoring the Sabbath, walking in obedience to his word, and keeping his holy days. Just think when we send up our cries and our prayers to Yah. Of course he's going to honor our prayers. He honored our ancestors' prayers when they were in bondage, and he was still a little angry at them. So just think what he'll do for us who are walking in obedience to him. So we must send up our cries and our prayers to our Father, Ms. Baka, against our oppressors and those who hate us. We pray that our Father bring that kingdom down speedily. As I continue. Okay, and he could not ride, for the thing was from Yahuwah to him. For Yahuwah had heard the cries of his people, the children of Yazerel, and their affliction. So our Father really cares about the cries and prayers of Yazerel. He cares a great deal about our prayers. And his servants carried him upon their shoulders a little at a time, and they brought him back to Mizraim, and the horsemen who were with him came also back to Mizraim. So they never even got to Goshen. For whatever he had planned, he wanted to see the scoff that they had said that Yazerel was doing because they knew he was sick. Whatever he had planned in his wicked mind, he never got to it because Yah broke him down before he got to the children of Yazerel. Okay? It said this thing was from Yahuwah. Verse 47. And they placed him in his bed, and the king knew that his end was come to die. So Apparaneth, the queen, his woman, came and cried before the king. And the king wept a great weeping with her. And all his nobles and servants came on that day and saw the king in that affliction, and wept a great weeping with him. And the princes of the king and all his counselors advised the king to cause one to reign in his stead in the land, whomsoever he should choose from his sons. And the king had 3 sons and 2 daughters, which Apparaneth, the queen, his woman, had born to him, besides the king's children of concubines. Okay, verse 52. And Orthrilee, the firstborn of the king, was an idiot, precipitate, and hurried in his words. Precipitate, a person that he doesn't think things through. He does things hastily, without giving it much thought. So a really impulsive person his oldest son wasn't fit to be a leader, okay? But Adikam was a cunning and wise man, and knowing in all the wisdom of Mizraim, but of unseemly aspect, thick in flesh, and very short in stature. His height was 1 cubit. So this guy, his second son, was, they said, thick. He was a thick guy, burly guy probably, and short in stature. But anyway, it says he was wise in the things of Mizraim. That don't mean he was wise in the word of our Father Yah. He was wise in the things of Mizraim, which is only worldly knowledge. All right? And when the king saw Adikam, his son, intelligent and wise in all things, that king resolved that he should be king in his stead after his death. And he took for him a woman, Geduldah, daughter of Abilat, and he was 10 years old, and she bore him 4 sons. And he afterwards went and took 3 women and begot 8 sons and 3 daughters. Verse 57 says, and the disorder greatly prevailed over the king, and his flesh stank like the flesh of a carcass cast upon the field in summertime, during the heat of the sun. And when the king saw that his sickness had greatly strengthened itself over him, he ordered his son Adikam to be brought to him, and they made him king over the land of in his place. Okay, and at the end of 3 years, the king died. So he had been afflicted with leprosy and the boils and the pain and stinky flesh 13 years for putting that hard work upon the children of Yazerel. And their cries and their prayers went up to our Father, and he caused these sicknesses to overtake the king. And check it out, it's not over. And at the end of 3 years, the king died in shame, disgrace, and disgust, and his servants carried him and buried him in the sepulchre of the kings of Mizraim in Soan, Mizraim. But they embodied him not, as was usual with kings, for his flesh was putrid, and they could not approach to embalm him on account of the stench. So they buried him in haste, for this evil was from Yahuwah to him. For Yahuwah had requited him evil for evil, which in those days he had done to Yazerel. So our prayers matter a great deal to our Father. So we need to just keep sending up our prayers and our cries to our Father against these oppressors and those who hate us, that he speedily bring their wicked kingdom down, as he's already raising us back up. And he died with terror and with shame, and his son Adikam reigned in his place. And in addition to that, okay, Mr. Become, in my personal life, since my relationship with Yah, okay, now once upon a time when I was staying back in Minneapolis, and I got up one morning to get my day started, and I got to my car, which was on the side of the building that I lived in, and I was the security there. So they introduced me as security, a man of Yah, God. So matter of fact, that building, it was off the chain. There's a lot of people selling drugs, crack and stuff in the building. You know, a lot of people had got an emergency voucher to get the direct deposit from the county to get in the building, but they didn't have no job. So the guy who owned the building was really not getting his rent from at least 98% of the tenants. It was a building with about maybe 20 units, and it was only me and 3 other people paying rent on a monthly basis. But the rest of the tenants, they wasn't paying no rent, but they kept staying in the man's building. You know, so it was one of those kind of buildings in the hood. And so as they introduced me, the manager and the assistant manager was a brother from my hometown, but I didn't know him back in Gary. I met him here, and he was a man of God. Okay, so so these people, they told me, you know, don't allow people smoking cigarettes in the hallways and stuff like that. They got to be in their unit and stuff like that. So, you know, people who are on drugs and doing this kind of stuff, and, you know, it's all kind of stuff going on in that building, and they see me as a man of God, for one, and then 2, security. So they already got me as a target, you know, the enemy, their enemy. So, like I said, one day I got myself ready. I was getting ready to go run some errands one morning, and I got to my car. Somebody had busted the window, and these people would hang out in front of the building all night. They didn't work, so, you know what I'm saying. And my window was busted. I guess they thought they could find something valuable in it. So, oh man, it's something I wasn't expecting. So I went to the front of the building where at least 5 of them was hanging out. And I asked them, I said, did any one of you see anybody bothering my car last night? And they all was like, no, but that the look that they had is like they knew. They just weren't gonna tell me. And then one of the ladies said, she She used to sell drugs. She gonna say, now you know you're a man of God, so you can't do nothing. I'm telling you, y'all, I was mad. I was so mad, but I didn't see nobody doing it. And so I called the police to make a report, and they said, we would like to do more, but and you didn't see who did it, so we can't do anything. Maybe you put up some cameras or something. I said, okay, all right. So I actually went in my unit and I got on my knees and I prayed to Father Yah. And I just prayed. And about 2 weeks later, two of the main characters that I thought might have had something to do with it, the ringleaders of the group in the building. And one of them got evicted 2 weeks later for whatever. But he got evicted 2 weeks later. And the other one, who I thought might have had something to do with it, he ended up moving, shortly after that. He moved. So another incident, this sister I knew, and she was a woman of God. And so we were just fond of each other, and we used to fellowship and pray with each other over the phone and stuff like that. She called me one day and told me that this one on her job, this one Gentile lady, always giving her a hard time, and I said, it really pisses you off, though. And she said, oh, yeah. And, I said, it makes you so mad. You feel like you want to hit her, don't you? She said, yeah. I said, but we can't, as children of God, do stuff like that. We got to keep our cool. And then she said, what can I do about this? I said, just pray to the Father. Lift her up to the Father and say, ask our Father to not let her and the enemies of darkness prevail against you. Because it says in the scriptures, pray for those who despitefully use you and stuff like that. I said, that's what he wants us to do. That's his way. It's not our way. So, so she said, okay. I said, that's the last thing you want to do is lift somebody up to our Father who's doing you like that. I said, but it's not our way. This is his way. Because if we do things our way, we're going to get in trouble. So he wants us to lay our burdens upon him. Cast your cares upon him and our burdens upon him. For his burden is easy and his yoke is light, scripture says. So she said, okay, I'm going to do it. And I said, watch what he do for you after you send prayers up to him concerning this thing. You know how you feel inside. When we get angry, people from the nations make us so angry. He knows exactly how we feel. And so our ancestors in Egypt, they prayed to our Father because Pharaoh of Egypt put so much hard work on them. Morning, noon, and night, every day. And our Father brought a sickness upon him and eventually killed him. So I said, we don't know what he's going to do, but I bet you he'd take care of that for you. And she said, okay, I'm going to do that. And she called me 2 days later, stunned. She said, I can't believe what's going on. She was barely able to speak. I said, what's going on? She said, I'm cleaning out this office. I said, at the job? She said, yeah. I said, whose office are you cleaning out? She said, the lady that always harassed me and gave me a hard time, they let her go today. 2 days later, after she prayed for the lady, they fired her. See, when we put our enemies up before Yah, he will remove his grace from them. Everybody have a tab of Yah's grace on them right now. But he's removed his grace from Psalm 83 to a degree. That's why they're in derision right now. Derision. So anyway, Ms. Bukai, this is what she told me after she lifted that woman up, that she ended up getting fired 2 days later. Another time on this job that I had in Minneapolis years ago. Now this Mexican guy who was a supervisor on the second shift, had got released because they found out he lied on his application. He didn't have a green card, and so the first shift supervisor asked one of the guys on my shifts. I worked like swing shift from like noon to about like 8:30. So I was on part of the first shift, and I finished on my shift on the second shift with that job. So the first shift supervisor was asking this one guy on my shift, the second shift, if he would volunteer and take the supervisor position. And he was kind of like, didn't think he could do it. And him and I was cool. We've been working together for years. And I said, man, you could do that. Man, Daniel did it. He did it. What makes you think you can't do it? Because he was like, oh, no, I don't want to, I said, go ahead and do it, man. You know what I'm saying? They're going to walk you through it. You can do it. And he said, you think so? I said, man, I know you can do it. And he ended up taking a position. And once he became the supervisor, and he didn't need nobody training him no more. So now, like when the plant manager left and went home at 3:30, and the first shift supervisor, so he became the man in charge on the night shift. And his power went to his head. And even the other Hispanic people on the job didn't like him because he would yell at people. That was very unprofessional. He asked me to take something up on the elevator once, a basket or something, so I did it, but I had to clean the elevator off of other stuff that people left on there. Instead of taking their stuff off, they left a lot of stuff on the elevator, so I had to get all this stuff off first and then take the basket up that he asked me to take up. So by the time I got doing that, I come back downstairs and these guys actually yelling at me. It took you 10 minutes to take that basket upstairs. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I don't like people yelling at me. I'm a grown man. I'm not yelling at you. You know what I'm saying? So, woo. But anyway, I said, I got it done, And he was just really power tripping, pulling out the credit card, the company, let him hold while he's the supervisor, and he bragging, look at my credit card, the company credit card. I could buy any effing thing I want. It was really power tripping. And like that job there was, it was a union, and we had to wear uniforms from Monday to Thursday. But on Friday, we could just dress in regular clothes. So one day I come in there on Friday, and I had on, it wasn't expensive, just a polyester shirt that matched the shorts. It was black. And he gonna say, you sure buy the right colors. Laughing, you know what I'm saying? And there's just, when he became the supervisor, it was just a real solid atmosphere over the whole job. Nobody was smiling no more. It was like he was a tyrant ruling over us. And I was like, man, I don't think I'm gonna be able to work here too much longer because he pushed my buttons too far, and I was still a work in progress, more so back then than I am now. And I was like, I don't want to get in no trouble. So he said something to the plant manager about me that I wasn't doing my job right. So the plant manager stayed over one day, and he watched me work. And I heard him say to the supervisor, what is he doing wrong? He's doing his job right. I had been there for years. I knew what I was doing. And he would always call people to his office on the PA, just bugging people. I was like, how can I do my work? You're always calling me in your office for one thing or another. So anyhow, I was like, okay, I'll tell you what. I'm just gonna quit because I don't want to end up getting in trouble. And I punched out, and then the plant manager called me back. He told me, come in the office with the supervisor. And he had a talk with us and stuff like that. I said, I don't like drama. I've been working here for a lot of years, and I ain't had no problem with nobody until he became supervisor. You know what I'm saying? All of a sudden, he always bugging people like we don't know how to perform our jobs. And we've been doing these jobs for years before he became the supervisor. But all of a sudden, he want to tell us we don't know what we're doing. You know what I'm saying? I said, I don't have time for this. You know, and anyway, he talked me into staying. And I just don't want to get in trouble for hitting him in the mouth. You know what I'm saying? You yelling at me, man. You know, I don't play that. You know what I'm saying? And so anyway, I stayed on, and I think maybe about a month later, I ended up quitting anyway. You know, I mean, I was already dealing with some personal stuff outside the job. And then I got to come to work and deal with his bull. So I just went on quit. And then I actually went to Minnesota Teen Challenge. That's like a treatment center for, you know, Christian people. But I didn't need no treatment, like as far as using drugs and alcohol and anything like that. It was just to get some counseling for me and my second wife. So I was in there 2 months. I finished, I got my certificate, and I came out. And so I'm back to looking for work. And then the plant manager called me, asked me was I still looking for work. From the last job, I just quit. I said, yeah, I'm still looking. This is like 2005, so it wasn't a whole lot of jobs in Minnesota then. I had, you know, all the temp agencies, nothing was, they didn't have no work to send nobody out nowhere. So he called me back to work. And then everybody was happy because they knew me for a long time. And then I said, oh man, the supervisor was still there, you know. I said, I'm just gonna tune him out. You know what I'm saying? I need to keep this job because I was paying child support at the time. And anyway, to make a long story short, this young white guy named Richie, he was looking kind of sad, you know, like he lost his best friend. And I said, Richie, what's wrong, man? You look like you lost your best friend. And he said, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? I said, sure, man. We talk all the time. I said, what's going on? He said, you know that young lady, Nikki, my friend I told you I grew up with? I said, yeah. And she, you know, nice looking. Richie was in love with her. You know, she was mulatto. And so, but she told Richie, my white coworker that she grew up with, she liked black dudes. And so she had only worked for like a week. I used to call her little sister. You know what I'm saying? And so he said, you know what she told me? I said, what? He said, she told me she quit. The reason why she quit was because of the supervisor. The supervisor was always hitting on her. I said, really? Saying that he would take care of her and her little baby and stuff like that. And he also said to her that he didn't like Richie because Richie was kind of slow. And Richie was mad. He was mad. He was in love with that young lady. She was about 22. He was about 24. And he said, what you think I should do? I said, don't say nothing to him. We got him now. And the plant manager was on vacation. I said, don't say nothing to him, you know. And I said, just wait till the plant manager come off his vacation and tell him exactly what you told me. He said, okay. He said, that's what the first shift supervisor told me to say. The Asian guy. I said, don't say nothing to him, you know. And so I went back to my job. I'm on the dock, and the supervisor, the Mexican, he was from El Salvador. He knew something was up, so he asking me questions. Oh, what's up? What's going on? Ain't nothing going on. We're working. You know what I'm saying? When ain't nothing going on, I ain't got nothing to say to you. You dig? We got you now. This is what I'm thinking. We got you now. So after the plant manager come back from work, but I had prayed for him. I mean, I forgot to mention that. After I got back hired, he was still the same way. And I was really mad one day because he yelled at me. And it was right at the punch-out clock. I said, man. So I'm walking out the door, and I'm saying to my father, you know, what am I supposed to do in the midst of things like this? You know, I don't want to get myself in trouble for hitting him in the mouth, you know. What am I supposed to do? And it was like the Spirit said to me, what have I told you to do in situations like this? And I was thinking like this. So when I got home, I sat down and I picked up my Bible and I just opened it up. Without turning any page, I just opened it up. And right there on that page where I opened it up at, it said, pray for those who despitefully use you. Pray for those who persecute you. I said, oh, okay. I got on my knees. I lifted that dude up. I lifted him up, And then I took the burden off myself. I gave it to our Father. And so he wasn't really no problem to me no more. Since I had given it to our Father, I would just look at him and laugh. You know what I'm saying? Like, man, you messed up inside. He power tripping and stuff, but I didn't have nothing to say bad against him. His words didn't bother me no more. And so, man, now here it is like 2 months later after I prayed for him, now Richie, the white guy, is telling me that the supervisor was hitting on his lady friend that he grew up with and caused her to quit because she got tired of him hitting on her. So now the plant manager's off vacation. Richie done went up there to talk to him because they called the supervisor on the PA. Juan, could you please report to the second floor office, please? So he ended up going up there, and he came back on the dock and said to me, well, he told me I needed a vacation, and, everybody make mistakes. So he thought that was it. Everybody make mistakes. He gave me a couple of days vacation, I said, okay, good for you. But when he, the next day, while he was on vacation, they sent him an email. We're giving you a chance to resign. You know what I'm saying? If not, we're going to terminate you. So they got rid of him when he was on his vacation. And this one lady, one coworker, she had a clipboard walking around trying to see if she can get people to sign it, to get him back. And she came out to the dock while I was working with the plant manager. And they asked me when I signed a clipboard. I said, hey, I'm going to put it to y'all just like this. I wish him all the best in all his endeavors, but I will not be signing that clipboard. That's it. I went back to work. Nobody on the job signed that clipboard except for that lady who he had a lot of lust for. She was a nice looking lady from El Salvador, but she was married. And because the supervisor used to tell me things, he wished she could hit it and all that, you know what I'm saying? And he was just nothing. He was nothing. And so nobody signed her clipboard. And anyway, so he was gone. And everybody was happy after that. So I'm just giving two or three examples of praying to Yah, from being afflicted by people from the nations. And he answered a couple of my prayers from people who bothering me, got rid of 2 tenants from my building I knew had something to do with busting my car window. And he got rid of the supervisor who was always just a tyrant on the job. And this young lady that I knew got rid of this Gentile lady who always harassed her, gave her a hard time on the job. After she prayed for that lady 2 days later, our Father took care of her. So those are just some examples, Ms. Picard, that our Father, our prayers do matter to him a great deal. So Ms. Picard, let's send up prayers together against those who have been oppressing us and those who hate us. Let's pray collectively together to our Father, and we'll let the chips fall where they may. Okay, because our Father, Yahuwah Elohim Almighty, really, really, really cares about the prayers of Yazerel, and we are the apple of his eye. Okay, so stay tuned for more messages from Brother Judah Israel for those who don't know me. So until next time, may y'all bless everybody. Stay safe, one love, and shalom.